There was a whole way of eating Sunday lunch in the American South. Hot, cheap, made from scratch that morning, slid down a stainless steel rail on a brown plastic tray. And on December 1st, 2025, after 88 years, the last of it switched off the lights for good. Nobody banned it. No scandal. No villain. The K&W Cafeteria just closed all its doors, one steam table at a time, and a warm world that millions of Southern families grew up inside quietly slipped off the map. Today I'm walking you through 25 plates that lived on that K&W line. The famous ones your grandmother ordered every single week, and the strange, wonderful, half-forgotten ones hardly anyone under 50 has ever tasted. Stick around to number 8. That's the one grown adults bought a plane ticket for. Number 17 is the one that vanished so completely the world forgot it was ever food. Let me set the table. Picture Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 1937. A coffee shop on Cherry Street run by a man named Knight and 3 Wilson brothers. That's where the K and the W come from. By 1941, a former employee named Grady Allred owned the whole thing, and after a fire, he rebuilt it not as a sit-down restaurant but as a cafeteria. You grabbed a tray. You slid it along a chrome rail past a wall of steam and glass, and you pointed at what you wanted while a woman in a hairnet spooned it onto a warm plate. By the 1960s, that exact format ruled the South. 35 K&W locations at the peak, spread across North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia. Then the interstate came, and the drive-through, and the 2-income household with no time for a Sunday sit-down. And the whole thing faded. So here's the K&W tray, rebuilt from memory. 25 plates. I've lined these up the way you'd actually walk the line. Rolls and meats first, the vegetables and the odd stuff in the middle, the dessert case at the very end, right where it always broke your heart. Let's start at the front. Number 1. The yeast rolls. You remember these even if you remember nothing else. Little golden domes, pull-apart soft, that showed up in a paper-lined basket before you'd even sat down. Most people picture a dinner roll and stop there. What made the K&W roll different was the butter. They came out glistening, brushed hot, and the steam fogged the inside of the basket. People drove across 2 counties and ordered a dozen to take home cold. They faded because scratch yeast dough takes hours a modern kitchen won't spend. The freezer case brown and serve roll was good enough, and good enough is how most things leave us. Hold that thought, because the next plate was the reason the regulars walked in the door. Number 2. Fried chicken. Bone-in, dredged that morning, fried in deep cast iron until the skin cracked like a knuckle. You knew it. Every Southern table knew it. But the cafeteria solved a problem home cooks fought every Sunday. It held. Sitting under a heat lamp for 2 hours, K&W chicken stayed crisp because the breading was built to survive the steam line, not just the fryer. It didn't disappear so much as get outpriced. A bucket from a chain cost less and waited for nobody. Crispy held under a lamp is a lost craft. The next one, though, is the dish people argue about to this day. Number 3. Baked macaroni and cheese. Forget the creamy stovetop stuff. The cafeteria version was a custard. Eggs and milk and sharp cheddar baked in a deep pan until you could cut it into a square and stand a fork up in it. That square is the part people forget. It wasn't a side that pooled. It was sliceable, dense, with a browned skin on top that everyone fought over. It slipped away because the boxed and frozen versions trained 2 generations to expect orange and soupy, and the baked custard mac started tasting wrong to people who'd never had the real one. That's 3 you knew. Now it gets less familiar. Number 4. Roast beef with brown gravy. A slab of slow-roasted beef, sliced thin against the grain, drowned in a dark pan gravy built from the drippings. You've had pot roast. This wasn't that. This was the cheap cut, bottom round, roasted low for hours until a tough piece of meat surrendered, then carried by a gravy that was really the whole point. The gravy was free labor. It used the brown bits a home cook throws out. Restaurants stopped making it because slow roasting a cheap cut for 6 hours costs more in oven time than the meat saves. Number 5 lived right beside it, and it's greener than you're picturing. Number 5. Turnip greens with the pot liker. Dark, silky greens simmered for an hour with a piece of fat back until they went tender and a little bitter. Greens themselves are no mystery. What's been lost is the pot liker. The dark, vitamin-rich broth left in the pot, which old folks sopped with cornbread and considered the best part. At K&W, you could ask for extra liker in the bottom of the dish. They went because simmering greens an hour fills a kitchen with a smell apartment living quietly pushed out, and the bagged, pre-washed salad replaced the whole ritual. Number 6. Fried okra. Little coins of okra, rolled in cornmeal, fried until the slime that scares people cooks completely away and you're left with something between a crouton and a hush puppy. You've maybe had it gummy. The K&W version was the argument against that. Fried hot and fast in cornmeal, so each piece was a crisp shell, salty, addictive, eaten by the handful like popcorn. It faded with the home garden. When families stopped growing okra in the backlot, the only okra most kids met was frozen and sad. The next plate is its cousin, and it has a secret. Number 7. Hush puppies. Deep-fried cornmeal dumplings, crunchy outside, steamy and sweet inside, served 3 or 4 to a plate. Surface story. Fried cornbread balls, fish fry food. Here's the part that gets skipped. The good ones had grated onion and a spoon of sugar worked into the batter, which is why a K&W hush puppy tasted faintly sweet and savory at once. They quietly left the everyday table because nobody deep fries at home anymore. A pot of hot oil is the one piece of equipment the convenience era talked us out of. Now, number 8. This is the one I told you to wait for. Number 8. Chicken livers. Stay with me, because this is the plate people are strangest about. Dredged in seasoned flour and fried like the chicken, served in a little heap, rich and iron dark and crisp at the edges. Most folks today wrinkle their nose, but there are grown, successful people who have boarded an actual airplane, rented a hotel room, and flown across several states for the sole purpose of sitting down to a tray of K&W chicken livers, fried okra, and greens, and eaten their greedy head off without 1 ounce of shame. A food writer admitted it in print. That's the power this plate had. It's nearly gone now because organ meat fell out of fashion the moment Americans got rich enough to be squeamish, and a whole cheap, nourishing tradition went with it. The next 4 are pure Sunday. Number 9. Ham steak with gravy. A thick center-cut slice of cured ham, griddled until the edges caramelized, served under a thin pan gravy. Ham itself is no secret. What the cafeteria knew was the gravy. A little coffee or a splash of the ham's own salt-sweet drippings stretched across the plate so the rice or grits beside it weren't dry. It thinned out because cured center-cut ham got expensive, and the spiral-cut holiday ham trained us to think of ham as a once-a-year thing instead of a Tuesday plate. Number 10 is the darker, slower sister of number 5. Number 10. Collard greens. Bigger, tougher, sweeter than turnips. Collards needed the longest simmer on the line, an hour and a half with smoked meat until the leaves gave up and went velvet. People know the name now from trendy restaurants. What's lost is the patience. Real collards aren't quick, and the K&W cook started them before dawn. They faded for the same reason all the long simmer greens did: time. Nobody under a certain age was taught that some food just takes the morning. The next plate is a casserole nobody makes from scratch anymore. Number 11. Squash casserole. Yellow summer squash cooked down soft, bound with egg and cracker crumbs and a little cheese, baked with a buttery crumb top. The green bean casserole from a can. You've met that one. This was the garden version. Built in August when squash came in faster than anyone could eat it, a way to turn a glut into comfort. It vanished with the backyard plot. When the squash stopped showing up by the bushel on the back porch, the casserole that existed to use it up had no reason left to exist. Number 12 is the sweet one that pretended to be a vegetable. Number 12. Candied yams. Sweet potatoes baked soft, then glazed in brown sugar and butter until they nearly turned to candy, sometimes with a scorch of marshmallow on top. Everyone half remembers these from a holiday. What got forgotten is that on a cafeteria line they were an everyday side, not a once-a-year thing. A hot, sweet, cheap filler that made a thin plate feel like a feast. They got penned into Thanksgiving and locked there, and the rest of the year nobody thought to make them. The next plate cost a nickel and took real skill. Number 13. Deviled eggs. Hard-boiled, yolks whipped with mustard and mayonnaise and a dust of paprika piped back into the white. Church picnic food, you're thinking. But on the K&W line, they sat chilled in a long row. A cool, sharp bite against all that hot starch, and a tray of them disappeared faster than anything. They left the everyday menu because they're fiddly. Peeling 24 eggs clean is a thankless half-hour. And fiddly is exactly the kind of work the modern kitchen decided it was too busy for. Number 14 is the one that tasted like being taken care of. Number 14. Chicken and dumplings. Pulled chicken in a thick, peppery broth with flat, slick dumplings, rolled and cut, not the puffy dropped kind. Stewed until the whole thing went silky. Plenty of people know the dish. The cafeteria secret was the flat dumpling, rolled thin as a noodle and cut into ribbons, which soaked up broth instead of sitting on top of it. They thinned out because rolled dumplings are a flour on the counter, half-morning job, and the canned biscuit shortcut never tasted like the real one. Number 15 wore a fancy name for humble meat. Number 15, Salisbury steak. Ground beef shaped into an oval patty, browned, and simmered in onion gravy. You know it from a frozen dinner, which is exactly the tragedy. Before the TV dinner tray stole the name, Salisbury steak was a from-scratch way to make cheap ground beef feel like a real cut of meat. The gravy and the onions did the lifting. The frozen version didn't kill it. The frozen version just took the name and the memory, and a whole generation grew up thinking that gray little puck was the original. The next plate is its country cousin. Number 16. Country fried steak. A cheap, tough cube steak pounded thin, breaded, fried like chicken, and blanketed in white pepper gravy. Most folks know chicken fried steak from a diner. What the cafeteria did was treat the gravy as the meal. Peppery, milk-built, poured thick enough to cover the steak, the mashed potatoes, and half the plate besides. It faded as the cube steak itself disappeared from meat counters. Once the cheap pounded cut stopped being sold, the dish that depended on it had nothing to stand on. Now, number 17. This is the one that vanished hardest. Number 17. The congealed salad. The vegetable congeal. If you're under 50, you may not believe this was ever food. A glistening, quivering block of flavored gelatin with vegetables or fruit suspended inside, cut into a square and served, unironically, as a salad. But for your grandmother's whole life, this was the height of a nice plate. The buried part that got lost with it. It wasn't a dessert. A, K, and W congeal could be savory. Lime gelatin with shredded carrot and celery, or tomato aspic sharp with vinegar. And it sat on the salad end of the line as a cool, jiggling, genuinely beloved bite. It didn't fade. It fell off a cliff. The moment the dinner party culture of the 1950s and 60s died, the entire art of the molded gelatin salad died with it. No law, no scandal, just a whole genre of food that an entire generation simply stopped passing down. Almost nobody makes it. Almost nobody can. The next 6 head toward the dessert case, and they get sweeter and heavier as we go. Number 18. Baked custard. Eggs, milk, sugar, and nutmeg baked slow in a water bath until it's set into something halfway between a flan and a hug, served in its own little dish. People know creme brulee from a fancy menu. This was the plain, unbranded ancestor. No torch, no caramel shell, just a trembling sweet custard with a freckle of nutmeg on top, the cheapest comfort a kitchen could make from what was already in it. It quietly left because it tastes like effort with no flash, and the snack pack pudding cup offered the same idea cold, sealed, and instant. Number 19 is a vegetable that thinks it's a dessert. Number 19, stewed tomatoes. Canned or summer tomatoes cooked down with sugar, butter, and torn bread until they thickened into something soft and sweet tart, almost a pudding. You've maybe had a fresh tomato. This was the cooked, sugared, bread-thickened version that turned a humble tomato into a warm side dish, a way to eat summer in February off the canning shelf. It vanished with home canning. When the rows of mason jars left the basement, the dish built to use them up went with them. Number 20 is the bread that came in its own shape. Number 20, corn sticks. Cornbread batter baked in a cast-iron mold shaped like little ears of corn, so each stick had crisp, ridged edges and a soft middle. Everybody knows cornbread. The corn stick mold is the lost part. A heavy cast-iron pan, shaped, that gave you more crust per bite than any pan of cornbread could, and a shape kids actually got excited about. The mold disappeared from kitchens, and with it the only reason corn ever came in a stick. Number 21 is the plate that splits a room. Number 21. Liver and onions. Sliced beef or calf liver, dredged and pan-fried, smothered in a mountain of slow, sweet caramelized onions. Half of you just made a face. But this was a cornerstone cheap protein plate for 100 years, and the onions weren't a garnish. They were the whole strategy, cooked down sweet to balance the iron of the liver. It's nearly extinct for the same reason the chicken livers are. The moment organ meat read as poverty food, a rich country threw out one of the most nutritious cheap dinners it ever had. Number 22 is the one that tasted like your grandmother's kitchen. Number 22. Banana pudding. Layers of vanilla custard, sliced banana, and vanilla wafers, sometimes crowned with a torched meringue. You think you know banana pudding. The cafeteria version was built in a deep pan in the morning and given hours to sit, so the wafers softened into cake and the whole thing set up sliceable. Not the loose, just stirred bowl you get now. It survives in pockets, but the made that morning, meringue-topped, properly set version is fading, because real custard from scratch lost to instant pudding and a tub of whipped topping. The last three are the dessert case itself, the part of the line that always undid you. Number 23. Egg custard pie. A single crust pie filled with nothing but sweetened, nutmeg-dusted egg custard, baked until it just barely set with a tremble in the middle. Most people have never had a pie this plain, and that's the loss. No fruit, no chocolate, no gimmick. Just eggs and milk and sugar in a crust. The kind of pie a farm wife made because she always had eggs and always had milk. It disappeared because plain stopped selling. A pie has to be loud now, and the quietest, most honest pie on the case had no defense. Number 24 is the one that came bubbling. Number 24. Peach cobbler. Sweet summer peaches under a craggy, buttery, sugar-crackled crust, baked in a deep pan until the fruit bubbled up through the cracks, served hot in a puddle of its own syrup. You've had a cobbler. The cafeteria one came out of a pan the size of a tabletop and was scooped, still steaming, so the bottom crust went soft and the top stayed crisp. A contrast a single-serve dessert can't give you. It's fading because a from-scratch cobbler is a pan, an oven, and a free afternoon, and the freezer aisle sells a tidy facsimile that asks for none of those. And the very last plate on the line, number 25, is the one people drove home thinking about. Number 25. Coconut cream pie. A deep coconut custard in a flaky crust, piled high with real whipped cream and a snow of toasted coconut, sitting in the glass case at the end of the line under a single light. This was the showstopper. The pie you saw, the second you picked up your tray and quietly planned your whole meal around. The custard was made from scratch and chilled for hours. The cream was whipped, not squirted. The coconut on top was toasted so it crackled. It's the hardest to find now because every step of it is slow, and a chain dessert is built to be fast, shelf-stable, and forgettable. The coconut cream pie under that little light was none of those things, and that's exactly why you still remember it. So what actually happened to all of it? Look back at those 25 plates. Different foods, different ends of the line. But they all died the same quiet death, in the same narrow window, for the same handful of reasons. Start with the kitchen itself. Every one of these took the morning. Greens simmered for an hour, custards baked in a water bath, dumplings rolled out on a floured counter, a cobbler that needed an oven and an afternoon. Then the country sped up. The interstate replaced the Sunday drive with a drive-through. Two-income households stopped having a free weekday to cook from scratch. Convenience food, the freezer case, the instant pudding, the boxed mac, the spiral ham, didn't outlaw a single one of these plates. It just offered something good enough for less effort, and good enough one shortcut at a time. The cooks who knew the real versions retired, and the daughters who'd have learned from them had moved to the city and gone to work. The backyard gardens that fed the squash casserole and the stewed tomatoes got paved. And the cafeterias themselves. S&W, Furs, Wyatt's, and finally K&W closed one steam table at a time as fast casual chains and all-you-can-eat buffets took the room. K&W lasted longest, 88 years. The pandemic knocked it into bankruptcy in 2020, and on the 1st of December, 2025, the last doors closed. Of these 25 plates, count how many you can still order at a restaurant near you tonight. For most of you, the honest number is close to 0. But here's the warmer truth. Almost none of this was ever lost in a way you can't get back. Nobody patented these plates. Nobody made them illegal. The recipes are sitting in church cookbooks and on index cards in your mother's handwriting, and in the memory of anyone over 70 who's willing to talk while you take notes. The congealed salad, the egg custard pie, the rolled dumplings, the potlucker. Every one of them is a free afternoon and a little patience away from being on your own table again. You can simmer greens low and slow this Sunday. You can bake a custard mac in a square pan and slice it. You can pull the cast iron out and fry okra in cornmeal the way it was meant to be. None of it is hard. It's just slow. And slow is the only thing the convenience era ever really took from us. The skills aren't gone. They're waiting. The next time you sit down with someone who remembers a K&W tray by heart, ask them which plate they'd order first. Then go make it with them, before that memory closes its doors too. When K&W finally turned off the lights, the family left one short message. They said it had never really been about the restaurant. It was a gathering place, a home for Sunday traditions, a warm table for millions of families across generations. That's the part you can't lose to an interstate or a freezer aisle. The tray is gone. The chrome rail is gone. The woman in the hairnet who knew you took extra pot liquor is gone. But the plate she handed you, that you can still set down in front of someone you love. If you stayed with me through all 25, you already understand why that matters. You're the kind of person who remembers that food was once a way a whole family said, "I made this for you." Pull up a chair sometime and tell me which K&W plate you'd bring back first. And the next time we walk a line like this together, we'll set out another tray of the dishes the rest of the world forgot.